I'm starting off the look today with the P. Louise base in the shade Rumour 3. And I'm going to be using the Give Me Glow Grunge palette. I'm sorry I didn't show you the palette in the very beginning, which is what I normally do, but you'll see snippets of it as we go along. Just blending out the base all over my eye. I'm going into the palette now. I'm going to take Teenage Dirtbag. Very interesting name for an eyeshadow. And I'm going to place that into the crease 3/4 of the way across in the crease, and then right there on the outer V area. And I'm going to blend that shade in with back and forth motions in the crease and small circular motions on the outer V area. And this is a nice cool tone brown. This is a nice cool tone neutral palette. Back into the palette, and I'm taking Bonehead and on a small Sonia G mini booster brush, and I'm going to place that in the inner quarter of the crease and blend that out using back and forth and little circular motions. I want to make sure I blend it into that cool brown shade that I just placed into the crease. And now I'm going to place it there on the brow bone. That's going to serve as my brow highlight, and then I'm going to blend it in with that cool brown shade that I started off the look with, because you know what I say, I know you're tired of hearing me saying it, but want to make sure we blend these shadows seamlessly together. And I definitely want to blend that out because it's very, very light and I don't want it to be too stark on my darker skin. And then back in with the original shade and making sure I blend it up a little bit into that white shade, because don't want it to be too stark and don't want to see any harsh lines between these two shadows. Then I'm going to go back in with that first brush and make sure we blend some more. I find when I do matte, when I'm working with matte shades, there's a lot of blending because you want to make sure that they blend seamlessly together. Now I'm taking that shadow Underground and I'm going to place that on the outer V, and it's a really, really dark, cool brown shade, so dark that it almost looks black. And I'm careful to go in with a little bit at a time and then build it up to the intensity that I want it, because this dark of a shade, and this may be a pressed pigment, Give Me Glow does put pressed pigments in their palettes as well. So, you know, with a shade this pigmented, and if it is indeed a pressed pigment, I'm not sure that it is, but probably. I want to make sure you tap it on and blend lightly, not so aggressively like I usually do, because I'll just end up blending the shadow away. So very lightly blending it and then just adding it and trying to do more tapping to add rather than blending, because again, don't want to blend the pigment or the shadow away. And then going back in with the first brush to make sure we blend around the edge of that dark shade, because we want them to have a seamless blend. Don't want it to be choppy or have any harsh or sharp lines of demarcation. Back into the palette, and I'm going to take Nirvana, and it's this beautiful, beautiful cool tone bronzy shade, and I'm using this shadow dry. I used both of these. There's only two shimmer metallic shades in this palette, and I used them both dry, and when I tell you, it applied like silk, so smooth, so silky, just chef's kiss. So beautiful, so easy to work with, so easy to blend. Going in with 90s, and that's another cool bronze, but it's just a little it has like a little more gold in it than the previous metallic. And I'm putting that in the inner quarter of the lid and blending it into the lid shade so that you almost can't really tell there's a difference between the two shadows. And then going back in very lightly again with that really deep brown shade and blending it into the lid shade and then the outer V. Don't want to lose the intensity of that brown, because that's what's given us dimension. And then back in with the crease shade. It's just a matter of just going back in with all the previous eyeshadows to make sure you're blending them all together. I'm sorry if you hear any noise. We're having a tropical storm right now, and the wind is high and it's beating the rain against the window pane. And now I'm just cleaning up underneath. I didn't have any fallout. This is just where I went outside of the eye with the shadows. Now I'm tight lining with the Sephora retractable liner in the shade Matte Black Brown. So I'm going to tight line, and then I'm also going to use this to do a liner on my lash line as close to my lashes as possible. I'm not going to be using false lashes today, so I don't want to make this liner too thick, too wide, because then my natural lashes will literally disappear up against it. So I'm trying to keep it tight as possible and as thin as possible, because I just want the lashes to look darker and thicker than they actually are. Now I'm going in and I'm trying to smudge this, but it's not really working because this is a matte waterproof liner, and I keep trying to do this, trying to smudge it, and it just doesn't really work because that's just not what it's made for. In order to smudge, I need something much creamier. So I'm gonna have to all of my liners I think are waterproof and matte. So now I'm moving on to the face, and I'm starting off with my primer, which is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r primer. This is the mattifying one. All the products that I mentioned will be listed in the description box below, so no worries if I don't mention everything. And now I'm going in with a second primer. This is the Dr. Brandt Pore Refiner primer. This is a mini. I wanted to try out the Dr. Brandt primer. I'm not sure if I got the right one. I think it does say Pores No More on the top, but I wonder if this is the one everyone's been raving about, because that's the one I wanted to try. That's why I picked this one out. And now I'm using the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. This is in the shade Dark 175W. And this is their newest foundation. And as you can see, it's got sort of a runny consistency. Not too runny, but definitely more runny and a thinner formula than my usual full coverage matte foundations. And I'm going to start off putting it on the one side of my face because I want you to see what it looks like once I've blended it out in comparison to the side with no foundation. And I'm using my Colored Rain beauty sponge to blend that in. And yeah, I've been trying this out. I will probably come back and do a quick and dirty review of this foundation. I finally picked the right shade. I was able to guess the right shade online. And I hit this one on the bullseye for a change. And that's what it looks like with one layer. And now I'm just gonna go in on the other side. And with this formula, I could have just done my whole face. But again, I wanted to show you the comparison between the two sides. So that's why I did it one side at a time. But this formula, you don't have to worry about it drying too quickly. And now I'm just taking what's left on my hand, on the back of my hand. I used one pump. And I'm just going over the areas that need more coverage. I didn't feel the need to use two full layers, so I'm just gonna go over what's left. And as you can see, you can still see my hyperpigmentation. You can still see my blemishes peeking through. So this is definitely a medium coverage foundation, which is how it's described. So I'm going to go back in with my Colourpop No Filter concealer in the shade Deep 70. And I'm just gonna go over those areas that are still peeking through because I'm a full coverage type chick. So if my foundation isn't gonna do the job, then I'm gonna have to go in with reinforcements. And I do let this concealer sit a little bit, let it set a little bit before I blend it out because that gives me more coverage. This is the Kevyn Aucoin Skin Enhancer in the shade SX13, and it's described, I believe, as a warm peach. And I'm using the smallest amount possible to put under both eyes. I used just the smallest dab, and that was good enough for underneath both my eyes. And I'm using this as a color corrector to try to help cancel out some of the darkness under my eyes. And this is the Juvia's Place I Am Magic Concealer in the shade 11. And this is the shade I use to conceal. And then I'm going to go in with the Estee Lauder Double Wear Radiant Concealer in the shade 4W Medium Deep. And this is the shade I'm using to highlight. Now, this was my first time using this concealer, the Estee Lauder concealer, and I used way too much. It blends out very well, very easily, very far. So a little bit goes a really long way, which of course I didn't know because it was my first time using it. And the coverage is not bad, but the shade is just not the right color for me. That's my Pat McGrath under eye blurring setting powder, and it was so fine that there's loose powder everywhere. And every time I use this powder, I'm afraid that I'm going to shatter it or it's going to break because it's so fine and so fragile. But I'm just using it to set all of the places that I place the concealer, and it does give me a little bit of brightening. This is in the shade medium, but it doesn't change the color of my makeup underneath. This is the Maybelline Fit Me powder in the shade Mocha 360, and I'm using this to set my whole face. I'm using one of the Paris Tools brushes that I picked up from Copycat Beauty. And I'm going to come back and probably give you a quick and dirty review on these brushes, the ones that I've used thus far anyway. This is the Maybelline brow pomade, this Tattoo Studio brow pomade in the shade Deep Brown, also 360. And I'm just using this to fill in my eyebrows. I'm using a slanted angle brush to do this. It's from Laura Mercier. It's a travel brush, dual ended with a spoolie on one side and the brush on the other side. And I'm literally just going to draw in my brows. And I was having a good day because this didn't take very long. Yeah, that's as good as it's gonna get. And now this is the Dior Show Maximizer 3D Lash Primer. I'm not wearing falsies today, so I'm going to try to give my mascara as much help as possible. I went in with the Lancome Monsieur Big Mascara, which I didn't show you. And this is the Sephora Bronzed Matte Bronzer in the shade number 6, Ibiza. And I'm going to take that and just bronze up my forehead and the sides of my face. And I was careful to go in with as little product as possible because this bronzer is extremely pigmented, but it blends out very easily. But you know, I'd rather do less blending and just use less than to go in with a whole bunch and then try to blend it out. But this is my Sephora brush. I don't remember the number, but yeah, this is a great brush for bronzing. And then you know who this is. This is Becca Cosmetics, my pressed highlighter in the shade Topaz, the Shimmering Skin Perfector. And I'm just going to use that to highlight the tops of my cheekbones. I like to put it in a C shape around my eyes. And then I'm going to take my finger and dab a little bit there at the top of the bridge of my nose. And then right there on the tip of my nose, and then right there on my Cupid's bow. And I'm going to go in with my brush by Profusion and just tap it out, blend it out a little bit, and then back in with my beauty sponge because I want it to look very natural and not obvious that I put highlighter in those areas. Now back to the eyes, and I'm just using my NYX Jumbo Eye Pencil in the shade Dark Brown. And putting that in the waterline. Then I'm going back into the palette with that really deep brown shade, and I'm blending that out all the way across the lower lash line. And then I'm using the same shade on the inner corner of the lid down there as my inner corner highlight. Again, I used it dry, and just look how metallic it is. And this is the final look. You know, cool tone, neutral eye look. And I like it. I like it. Now, finishing off the face, I'm going in with the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. And I'm just going to set all of that makeup I just placed down. And I'm going to just tap that into the skin with my makeup sponge. And that's my Burt's Bees lip balm in mango. Yummy. And that's the MAC Chestnut lip liner, because you know I don't use anything else. I mean, why? I don't feel the need to. And I'm just going to line my lips with it. Then I'm going to go in with the Pat McGrath Lust Gloss, and this is in the shade Bronze Divinity. A really, really pretty bronzy gloss with little specks of different colored like glitter. I don't have it with me, so I don't have it in front of me, so I can't describe it exactly, but it's a really gorgeous gloss. And this is the complete final look, makeup and eyeshadow. If you like this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I do makeup hauls, swatches, reviews, and tutorials here every Saturday. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.